Let's turn to business news now with Matt Chatterton. And Spark's in trouble with the Commerce Commission, Matt. What's happening there?
Yeah, the telco company is facing court action for allegedly, favourite word that one, overcharging thousands of customers. The Commerce Commission filed 11 charges under the Fair Trading Act in the Auckland District Court this morning. The charges relate to 3 separate issues, including overcharging for broadband data, a misleading voucher for new customers, and continuing to charge customers after they left the provider. Spark has already refunded more than $1 million to those affected customers. They also donated $260,000 to charities so that they wouldn't profit from those problems. As Chief Executive Simon Moutter told us earlier that he acknowledges the errors but says they weren't intentional. He also says the money the company and the Commission will spend on lawyers would have been better donated to charity, of course, and he did offer the Commission a settlement payment, but they did not accept it.
It's fascinating, that case, isn't it? There are new calls for property managers to be regulated. This is getting a bit of momentum, this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. I spoke to a couple of people within the industry recently. So this all came about because the Property Institute and Independent Property Managers Association, they've merged in a way, I guess, of holding off government plans to regulate the sector, which, as we know at the moment, has no real regulation. The two organisations have signed a memorandum of understanding to, as they say, lift the industry standards and snuff out what have been called the renegade property managers that have been tarnishing the industry at the moment. I'm sure you've seen the stories about managers offering properties that blatantly aren't up to standards. I mean, we had a report out of maggots, mould, and some properties with no curtains as well, which is all terrible to hear about. And it's not just independent property managers that are getting caught out by this either. It's also companies, which is also concerning. The Housing Minister Phil Twyford had hinted at introducing some stiffer rules to weed out those property managers that have been hitting the headlines. However, the Property Institute's Chief Executive Ashley Church, he told me the merger has pleased Mr Twyford somewhat, and that Mr Twyford has assured him he won't make any changes, looks like, until the next term of government. Obviously, the industry is trying to remain self-regulated. That's really what it wants at the end of the day, out of the control of the government. Yep. It's setting up an anonymous complaints process for tenants to come in if they have any problems. This is sort of the way of sort of appeasing the government, and it's also saying there'll be stricter testing for property managers that are members of these two organisations. However, I also spoke to the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand, the CEO, Bindi Norwell. She says the only way to stop these property managers that are causing so much trouble is to regulate. She says the moves that these two organisations are good, but self-regulation isn't the answer, and Mr Twyford needs to come down harder on these property managers.
We might try to talk to the Minister about that. Thanks, Matt. Hey, what happened on the markets today?
Well, actually, the NZX has fallen today, which is interesting given last week it was hitting so many highs. It's down 22 points to 9,062. The US dollar is down a little bit. It's sitting at around 68.4 US cents. The Australian's also down at 91.7, but the Great British Pound is up ever so slightly at 51.4.
Matt Chatterton doing business for us from Wellington. Thanks very much indeed, Matty.